On the first note, I would like to thank the organizing committee, Pushpanjali Medicon, for giving me this opportunity and having me over here. So today we are going to talk about the increasing relevance of fetal medicine in modern obstetrics. And we know that through the process of pregnancy, there are many of these phases: preconceptional counseling, early pregnancy, first trimester screening, when we intervene and we diagnose and we try to help out the obstetricians for the right management. And today I plan to take through all of these phases through cases from a fetal medicine's perspective. So coming to our first case, a 32-year-old female came to us for first trimester screening, that is at 11 to 13 weeks of gestation. The wife says that the husband's mother, that means her mother-in-law, has congenital deafness, and they wanted to know that is there any risk to the fetus because of this. And she was like, is it even possible to find out? So we performed an exome sequencing on the fetus's grandmother, and we found that she's homozygous autosomal recessive positive for GJB2 gene mutation. And after performing for the same gene mutation on the father and the mother of the current baby, we found that the father happens to be the carrier, however the mother is completely normal. So since it is an autosomal recessive condition, the baby has a chance of being a carrier. However, there's no increased risk of acquiring the phenotype in the baby. So just a basic review of genetic hearing loss. Most common cases are genetic in origin and they are recessive in the inheritance pattern. And especially with GJB2 mutation, if we know the pathogenic variant prior, or if we have tested the family, prenatal testing and pre-implantation genetic testing is possible, and a baby can be born completely without this phenotypic abnormality. Now coming to the second case, a 36-year-old female named X. Okay, this is her fourth pregnancy. In her first pregnancy, she had a normal female child. In the second pregnancy, there was a male child with multiple abnormalities. Nasal bone was involved, heart was involved, there were bone issues, there were even renal problems. And third pregnancy was a normal female child. Amniocentesis revealed some variants present and expulsion was done. And she's come to us for the fourth pregnancy, which is the current pregnancy. So couple testing was already done before she came to us, and we found out the karyotype was completely normal. Sanger sequencing was also performed in both the parents, and we found that there were some BBS2 variants in X, that is the female, and X's husband had another BBS2 variant, but the residues were different. Cytosine was replaced by thymine in the mother, and guanine was replaced by adenosine in the father. These are Bardet-Biedl syndrome variants. So, however, the abnormalities that we found in the baby of the second child, those are not explained by this mutation. So we performed another carrier focus exome, and we found out that the mother is positive for FANCB gene mutation, which is an X-linked recessive condition. And she also had Bardet-Biedl syndrome mutations, but that is not the reason why the baby had those abnormalities. So FANCB gene mutation was the reason why the second pregnancy was affected. And since it's X-linked recessive, a male child will obviously be affected in every pregnancy. There's a 25% chance, of course. And third pregnancy variants were found on amniocentesis, but since the baby is normal, and since this is an autosomal recessive condition, and in the husband's gene there is a uncertain significance, baby is likely not to be affected by this. So we have found out the causative pathogenic variant for this. We found the phenotypic abnormalities causing this. We and the geneticists, we have offered a IVF pregnancy with prenatal genetic testing for monogenic disorders prior to implantation. And in present pregnancy, the amniocentesis was done again, and the baby is completely normal. I just want to show you a small video clipping. I hope you can hear this. Is the volume not there?
बहुत कुछ मैं मिडिल क्लास फैमिली से यहाँ पे पहुँचने में बहुत मुश्किल हुई मैं बहुत खुश जो लोग मतलब मैं मैम से
So this is just a brief idea that how taxing, how emotionally disturbing it is for a female to go through multiple pregnancies, have genetic tests ordered, get abnormal results, have an abnormal child baby, 20 weeks terminations. It's extremely taxing, and a proper channel has to be followed, especially in preconceptional phase. And I hereby come to the importance of this part, that in any known genetic conditions or at risk of chromosomal problems, all of these that I've mentioned, any prior fetal complications like macrosomia, IUGR, infections, or even for that matter, non-immune hydrops cases, and prior children with birth defects, a fetal medicine opinion needs to be adjusted along with the obstetrician's care and a geneticist's care. We are a team together who manage, and this is what I wanted to take home from these two cases for preconceptional counseling. Further, now we go to the next level. Case 3 is a 29-year-old female. She has come to us at 12 weeks of gestation. I have put a normal image of the brain. You can see that the center white line FC is the falx cerebri, and choroid plexus is marked as CP. And in the baby that we've seen, we found that everything was fused. There's no differentiation between the right and the left side, and we diagnosed it as a case of Erlober holoprosencephaly. So it does not end with this. Further, there was also fused thalamus, which is one of the findings we find in Erlober holoprosencephaly. And along with that, we found bilateral echogenic kidneys and also tricuspid regurgitation. Now, I want you to note that this is a scan done at 11 weeks. Probably the baby is just 5 centimeters, the size of my finger, index finger, in fact. So the findings were highly suggestive of trisomy 13. We have recommended for a fetal karyotype with chorionic villus sampling. Of course, the prognosis was pure and patient underwent DNC. However, they were prepared for this a little because it was still an earlier gestation, and they could take this hard news as well. So the next case is again of the brain, where we see this is the normal brain, and here we see partly filled ventricles. The choroid plexus is not as much filling the ventricles as it should be. And on the abdominal section, we found that this is a normal image showing a stomach bubble. In this baby, there was no stomach bubble. So again, if you see, the crown ramp length is 5.6 centimeters. Nasal bone was present, nuchal translucency is normal, intracranial translucency is normal, ductus is normal, tricuspid is normal. All the things that we check for in our first trimester scan are normal. However, this baby has a suspected diagnosis of spina bifida. We have advised an early 16-week scan to look for any more abnormalities that come up, so that a proper genetic test can be recommended depending on the abnormalities and the phenotype we find. So the take-home message for this again, first trimester screening, is normal nuchal translucency, nasal bone, uterine artery Dopplers are not sufficient. Early I2 abnormalities is extremely important, especially in pregnancy, because it's already super, super heavy. Anyway, ultrasound must include all these factors: detection of abnormalities, cervical length screening, and preeclampsia screening. These are the ISUOG guidelines for first trimester scan. Now coming to the next phase again, mid-trimester level. A 39-year-old female came to us. First trimester screening scan was completely normal. At level 2, mid-trimester morphology, that is, there was rhizomesomelic shortening. That is, both bilateral long bones were short, bowed, and along with that, there was narrowed thorax or pulmonary hypoplasia. So I put a normal image of the coronal section of the fetal lungs, and you can see that the lungs are expanded and the thorax is well formed. On the other side, you see a bell-shaped thorax. Along with that, the left femur, if you see, it's less than the first centile for the gestational age, so it was severely short. So we have advised for amniocentesis with fetal DNA storage. So why would we do that? It is because a little bit of DNA that we store, it is literally only 1,000 rupees per year that they charge for a DNA storage, and it can really help in matching the next pregnancy with the same genetic mutation and avoid this cumbersome procedure at that point of time. Skeletal survey of the abortus is X-ray is considered the gold standard for all skeletal abnormalities. Even now, if you talk to any orthopedician, they would not go for an MRI without going for an X-ray. X-ray happens to be the gold standard even in fetuses that way. Fetal autopsy is to look for any more abnormalities that could be possible, and a clinical geneticist opinion, because we wanted to understand the pattern of inheritance. Why all this? Because the suspected diagnosis is an osteogenesis imperfecta or a thanatophoric dysplasia. Both of them are lethal abnormalities, and they are acquired in an autosomal recessive fashion. So there's a 25% chance that a baby could be affected by these problems. So we advised amniocentesis. However, it was not done. And later, the products of conception were tested for the same, and the lab has requested for resampling after 1 week. And by that time, abortus was returned to the patient, and we could not know the disease, we could not know the recurrence, we do not know anything about the genotype of this issue, only because POCs were tested. And from this case, I wanted to let everybody know that the only diagnostic testing that needs to be done in genetic conditions or for genetic tests in a fetus is amniocentesis or a CVS or fetal blood sampling, but never POC, because once you get a failure, there's nothing you can do after that. So the pregnancy goes to waste. Now, case 6 is a very simple scan where we got there's a 4-chamber view of the heart. The marked one is the right ventricle and the left ventricle. And in this baby, we found a non-branching vessel from the right ventricle and a branching vessel from the left ventricle. It's a very clear-cut diagnosis of transposition of great arteries, where the right ventricle is attached to the aorta and the left ventricle is attached to the pulmonary artery. After finding this, we have suggested these genetic tests to rule out any genetic inheritance of causative agent that has caused these abnormalities, and patient has opted a termination. Now, case number 7, this is a pretty interesting case. 31-year-old female. She has come to us for first trimester screening scan, and ultrasound and dual marker was suggested. Everything was normal. Nasal bone was present, NT normal, IT normal, ductus forward flow, tricuspid rigor, all normal at the end of the day. At 19 weeks, when we saw, the nasal bone on one side was not there. It was absent, and on the other side, it was present. So this is another sagittal section showing the nasal bone here, and on the other side, it was absent. This patient, I'm telling you, ultrasound at first trimester, completely normal. So after seeing this, we have advised an NIPT or amniocentesis. She went through an NIPT first, and it showed high risk for Downs. Now we did amnio, we did FISH in this patient along with karyotype, and there was an extra copy of trisomy 21. So this is a case I've kept to show that just because first trimester screening rules out Downs, it doesn't mean you rule it out. You always keep a look for all aneuploidies throughout the pregnancy. And mid-trimester morphology scan is the basic things that needs to be covered in this are anomalies, major and minor markers, type of testing to be done, quadruple, NIPT, invasive, and when we take a call of what, and always prefer amnio over POCs, testing and cervical assessment and placental pathologies for eccritas and all sorts. Now coming to the later part of gestation, this is a growth scan time that I'm talking about, and the last 2 cases also. So a 20-year-old female came for growth scan at 31 weeks. Growth was at suboptimal gestation, Dopplers were normal, LICO was normal. When we saw the brain, these are the lateral ventricles of the brain. Right side is less than 10 millimeter, and any dimension more than 10 millimeter is considered as ventriculomegaly, and on the left side it measured approximately 11.3 mm. So there was isolated left-sided ventriculomegaly, and isolated I say because we have seen the corpus callosum, we have checked for the vermis, we have seen the brainstem, posterior fossa, cortical malformations, and everything has been ruled out that there are no other problems associated with this condition. Now we have advised, okay, before our advice, why is it significant to know about ventriculomegaly when at 31 weeks you really can't do anything about it? The baby is going to be born at the end of the day. It is because it is absolutely necessary to keep the pregnant patient, their family in loop, and make them understand that what they should be expecting and what can be the issues that they could face, so that they're more mentally prepared when the child is being born. And they say that the risk of neurodevelopmental delay in isolated cases is 11.1%, and mild ones, the one we got where the dimension is less than 12 millimeter, there is comparatively a better prognosis compared to the severe cases. And the relative risk of neurodevelopmental delay, demise, and mortality have been mentioned for severe cases. And this really helps in keeping the patient's mental status a little on the better side by keeping them better informed. So we have advised for TORCH because ventriculomegaly is it's a sign, it's not a disease in itself. So we wanted to rule out any cytomegalovirus, toxoplasma infections. We have asked for 3-weekly surveillance, postnatal neurosonogram and MRI, and a pediatric neurologist opinion as well. And finally, the last case, A 35 weeks gestation pregnancy came for late growth scan. She was almost close to term, and growth was good. It was appropriate. Dopplers were normal. Leica was normal. Now, when we saw the heart, the right ventricle is dilated, left ventricle is narrowed. Now, we wanted to search what is the cause for this. We saw this is a three vessel view. It's called the three vessel view. In this, the blue arrows, only those three should be present. Now, there is a fourth vessel, and we found out that that is the left sided superior vena cava, along with the right sided superior vena cava, and pulmonary veins were normally draining into the left atrium. The possible diagnosis for such marked narrowing of the left ventricle is the coarctation of aorta, and we suspected that as the possible diagnosis. With bilateral superior vena cava, patient delivered at Max Saket, and surgical correction of the neonate was planned, and baby is healthy at present. Again, the same question. Why is it important to know a coarctation of aorta when the baby is going to be operated postnatally? It is because if you see research, and this article, in fact, it was done on a very large data set, and they found that in cases with postnatal detection, the incidence of lactic acidosis and the need for inotropic support in the babies was much more than the ones detected prenatally, and those babies did really well because the center is prepared to handle that baby. The parents are prepared to go ahead with the surgery. It helps the obstetricians to counsel them better. It helps the pediatricians to know what they are going to tackle. And finally, these are the ISWOG practice guidelines for growth. Growth parameters are basic. Dopplers are, of course, need to be done. Placenta is to be looked for abruptions and accreta. Scar evaluation in all previous cesarean patient. We do not need a requisition form where a gynac writes scar evaluation. We should be doing it at the end of the day. And evolving anomalies, it never goes. You see that throughout the period of gestation. And finally, take-home message. I have just put it in a form of a quiz. Try to answer it yourself. So in a breast cancer patient with BRCA1 mutation, can pregnancy be planned with baby born without its inheritance? Yes or no? Yes. So now we have the pre-implantation genetic testing, and HFEA, Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, has given that these following genetic mutations for BRCA1, 2 for breast ovarian cancers, Lynch syndrome, bowel, endometrial and ovarian cancers, FAP, that is familial adenomatosis, polyposis for bowel polyps, Li-Fraumani, all these conditions we can do a genetic testing, and it is ethically allowed for these conditions right now in hereditary cancers. Now second is preferred type of testing for genetic conditions. This, I think I've made it extremely clear. Amniocentesis, because sample failure is too big of a risk to take and you will have nothing to answer to the patient and their family. When are abnormalities to be looked for? First, second, third, all of the above. All of the above. Early pickup is psychologically less impacting, and growth scans just doesn't mean checking growth. And what are the genetic tests offered for abnormalities? Karyotype, QFPCR, chromosomal microarray, and depends on the phenotype and changes from one case to another. It changes from one case to another, though there are a set of genetic tests recommended, like for aneuploidies, we go for a QFPCR or karyotype. For a CNS abnormality, we go for something. Depending on the phenotypic abnormality we see on ultrasound, we should always take a call along with incorporating a geneticist in picture, because it is exceedingly time consuming, it's financially super burdensome, and emotionally, all of you know, we all face those patients. So thank you very much.
All of us have been in that situation, the obstetrician whose patient has been diagnosed with a problem. Questions the patient's. So yes, so the patient generally asks you, why did it happen to me? And what is going to happen next? Like, what happens for the next pregnancy? So you have sufficiently given good answers to both the let's say, the enigmas that the patient sort of comes up with, because it is definitely a very emotional, trying time. And it is important for us obstetricians too to be aware of the various nuances you have introduced in our conversation, because we are the ones who have to guide. Once the patient comes back to us, so many times they don't want to go for anything else. You know, bas bacha nikal do, nikal do. That happens a lot of time. So we have to take time to tell them that this is what's going to help you, and solving this problem now will help the pregnancies that are yet to come. So that message has to get across through the obstetrician most of the times, because then they keep on coming back to us, and we should not support the idea that let's get rid of this problem right now, which they have. One very interesting problem, which I would say is now patients with more and more things coming their way, with more diagnosis on ultrasound, small things are diagnosed. And and sometimes they're not willing to accept that. So I had this patient who was diagnosed, the baby was diagnosed with a claw foot. That is absolutely okay, but she was not willing to carry on that pregnancy. So sometimes I think, are we going down a dark hole? Because now people want designer babies. We have patients who say that my husband is myopic. I don't want my child to be myopic. So are we going to solve these problems also? So I don't know where it stops. I mean, what you've talked about makes a lot of sense, but with what we encounter sometimes, that becomes very upsetting really at times.
Basically, whatever the defects are diagnosed, they need to be walked it out. Like Madam has just discussed club foot. So even the club foot is Acha, the claw foot. So every defect, it is not needed to be terminated. It needed to be walked out, because many times there are things that should not be repeated in the next pregnancy one. There are things that can be managed at the delivery time, where we can choose a center where the surgery can happen. So what the message I will pass on is that every fetus needs an optimal outcome, not in the form of termination always. It needs an outcome, and fetal medicine is relevant in the fact, and you need to give them respect for the time they give to the patient, not only for the counseling, rather than searching for the defect, putting it into a pattern, and helping you to put the optimal outcome to these fetuses. Thank you so much for your talk.
Very, very nice, very exhaustive talk, Dr. Samantha, and shown so many nice cases. And that's very important in fetal medicine, where we should consider as a age of the pregnancy is increasing, and so much late because of the IVF. So many patients are conceiving late. So much anomalies we are expecting late, and educated class. So everybody should have, in such cases, everybody should go for the fetal medicine expert for such thing. And one more very important, when every gynecologist is referring for NT-NB scan, so besides NT-NB, all anomalies should be ruled out in that scan. That is very important. And in the consequent, and if there is no anomaly in NT-NB scan, but anomaly should be, as said, should be looked in all the scans. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samantha, for the enlightening